Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Cavan-Smith. Tonight, in South Africa, at least one person dies in student protests over tuition fees at Johannesburg's University of Witwatersrand. Also, Ivory Coast loses its second prime minister in less than a year. 56-year-old Hamid Bakayoko passes away from cancer in hospital in Germany. And Refile Ledwaba tries to inspire others with her sky-high ambitions. South Africa's first black female pilot runs a foundation training women in aerospace and aviation. But first, at least one person has died in days of clashes between police and South African students protesting over tuition fees at Johannesburg's University of Witwatersrand. Thousands of students were denied registration this year because they owed fees from the last. The man who died was reportedly a bystander who got caught in the crossfire when officers opened fire on the rallies. Jane Flanagan tells us more.
A man has been killed in Johannesburg when police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse a crowd of protesting students. The dead man was a 35-year-old passerby who was caught up in a retreating crowd as they fled the arrival of a police van. Witnesses said he was shot at close range in the back of the head by the police officer with rubber bullets. The police authorities say they will investigate. But the police service in South Africa does have a reputation for heavy-handed policing. And in a single year, 424 people were most recently killed. That's one every 20 hours. During the coronavirus lockdown, at one point, more people had been killed by the police and army enforcing rules than by COVID-19. The students were gathering outside the University of Witwatersrand, where the academic year is due to begin, and they're demanding that students with debts of €8,000 or less should be allowed to attend lectures. University education in South Africa is beyond reach for many black students, and another example of the deep inequality in this country, still, even a quarter of a century after the end of apartheid. The worst affected are what's known as the missing middle, the students who are too poor to even think about university education and those who aren't poor enough to qualify for financial aid.
Jane Flanagan there for us. Now, Nigerian labour unions marched to Parliament in Abuja on Wednesday over proposed changes to the minimum wage. A bill suggests allowing individual states to set the bar on salaries. Now, demonstrators fear that could lead to abuse of the system. Nicholas Joma tells us more.
Nigerian trade unions are fuming, and they went straight to the National Assembly in Abuja to tell lawmakers just what they thought about a bill currently under discussion. The bill would allow each of the country's 36 states to set its own minimum wage. It would no longer be decided by the federal government.
The issue of the minimum wage is about protecting the most vulnerable worker from exploitation and making sure that employers and government don't pay slave wages. So therefore, what they wanted to do, once you remove that bar of having a national ceiling of what cannot be paid as a wage, they will then go back and pay slave wages.
Nigerian trade unions represent millions of workers in Africa's most populous nation.
It's going to be a total problem for Nigerian workers. And before it happens, that is why we are here, to lodge a protest that bill must be killed immediately or we go on strike.
Many workers and teachers joined the demonstration.
We are not happy at all. We have our children and our needs too. They are suffering us in so many angles. Why? What have we done?
3 years ago, unions had gone on strike demanding that President Muhammadu Buhari increase the minimum wage. A few months later, he raised it from around €40 to €66 a month. If the new controversial bill is approved, the president still has the possibility of refusing to sign it into law.
So Ivory Coast has lost its second prime minister in less than a year. Hamid Bakayoko died in Germany, aged 56. He only took up the job last July after his predecessor, Amadou Gon Coulibaly, passed away suddenly. We're joined now by Sam Bradpeace with more. Sam, what do we know about the circumstances of his death?
Well, Ahmed Bakayoko had been in Europe for about a month receiving medical treatment for cancer, and his passing really is quite, well, it is important because not only was this the Prime Minister, he was also the Defence Minister, the mayor of a massive district here in Abidjan, and despite being too unwell to take part in campaigning in the lead up to the parliamentary elections, he even managed to win a seat in the National Assembly as well. So his passing really does come as massive news. There was a little bit of uncertainty, you know, at the very beginning we weren't really sure why he had gone for hospital treatment in Europe, but clearly the cancer was severe, and it really after just a month he's passed away. So yeah, all of this comes as a bit of a shock, I think, to many in the nation. Bakayoko was a very popular figure, known as a bon vivant, known as someone who liked to party, and his loss will be felt not only by the RHDP, but also by the President Alassane Ouattara, who has said that the nation is now in grieving.
So you've mentioned Ouattara there. Now, Bakayoko was a close ally of Ouattara. How is his party likely to affect the political scene? Because he was actually also seen as a potential presidential candidate eventually.
Yes, I mean he was he was tipped as a potential successor to Ouattara at some point. But now that he has passed away, well, actually since Monday, I should say, Patrick Ashi, who's the Secretary General of the ruling RHDP party, has been standing in as Prime Minister, and Ouattara's brother has been standing in as Defence Minister. So they will hold the fort for now, as it were. When it comes to kind of the long-term implications of Bakayoko's death, it's really, I mean, of course, it's too early to say, but he was a very popular figure, as I said, and his loss, certainly from an electioneering point of view, could be felt by the RHDP going forward. But then again, you know, who knows who is going to step up to the plate and who could potentially be in for a run as Ouattara's successor come the next presidential election.
Thanks very much. Sam Bradpiece there for us. Now, Tanzania's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, is calling for news of the health of President John Magufuli. He hasn't been seen in public for nearly 2 weeks. The 61-year-old has played down the threat of COVID-19 in the country and held off from ordering the customary precautions against the spread of the virus. Now, Lissu's claiming that Magufuli's being treated in hospital in Kenya. That these claims have not been confirmed, but have, however, sparked concern and speculation in Tanzania about Magufuli's well-being. The death toll from the blast at a military barracks in Equatorial Guinea's city of Bata has risen to 105. More than 600 people were injured when blocks of buildings were destroyed on Sunday. Many people are still missing, and authorities are struggling to cope with the aftermath. Hospitals have reportedly run out of space in their morgues. 3 days of mourning began on Wednesday, and the city's been declared a catastrophe zone. Many communities have been traumatized, and psychological support is being sent in. The UN, Spain, and the US Navy are also helping with the relief effort.
When he heard the first blow, my father left the house. Then the block hit him on the head. Then we tried to look for a way to save him, to take him to the crossroads, but he died.
I no longer have a house. I even went there to try and fix something. I don't have a job, and I'm also a widow.
Well, Wednesday was relatively calm in the Senegalese capital after days of anti-government demonstrations in which at least 5 people were killed. And opposition collectives called for a day of mourning on Friday in which participants should wear white, and said that the rallies will resume on Saturday. Now, the unrest was first sparked by the arrest of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko last Wednesday. But many young people say that their frustrations run much deeper. Our team reports.
Modu Nyong spends the morning in this abandoned minibus. He'd like to work in public transport, but he kills time with a group of friends instead, who, like him, don't have jobs. Modu didn't take part in recent anti-government demonstrations, but agrees with their demands. Many students from the Cheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar joined last week's rallies. Diame Faye studies law. He took part because he's concerned about his future.
Je suis là, je n'ai jamais trouvé, même en stage non rémunéré, quelqu'un qui a fait son cursus jusqu'en thèse. La jeunesse est laissée à elle-même, donc sans boulot, sans travail. Et les politiques de formation ne riment pas avec le marché du travail. Et ça, on l'a toujours fustigé.
Uncertainty, lack of employment, social injustice, growing frustrations, particularly amongst the country's youth, has fueled the demonstrations that have recently shaken the country, and not just on the streets. On social media, the hashtag #FreeSenegal, which appeared last Thursday, has been used more than 2 million times.
Le but était à la fois de pouvoir permettre à la toile sénégalaise de se rallier autour d'un message commun, mais également de pouvoir permettre d'envoyer un message au monde entier. Il y a un mécontentement, il y a une révolte qui s'est exprimée de diverses manières et qui va continuer de toute façon de s'exprimer de diverses manières.
Senegal hadn't experienced such unrest for a decade. In response to the expression of popular discontent, President Macky Sall has promised to make additional funds available for youth development and employment.
And finally, we hear from one woman who is flying high above the glass ceiling. Refile Ledwaba is South Africa's first black female helicopter pilot. She's carrying other women along for the ride and has trained hundreds at her foundation. Take a look.
170 and radar at 7,000 feet.
Refile Ledwaba is testing a flight simulator. She is South Africa's first black female helicopter pilot. She's in her early 40s and has several thousand hours of flying under her belt.
I'm one of the first black female in the country. And, you know, for me, that's not important. And for me, what was important is who is the second, who's the third, who's the fourth, who's the 100th person. Then we start talking.
She created a foundation and has already trained hundreds of young women in aerospace and aviation.
Just having someone to look up to that's so fearless and so determined to change the narrative of women in this space has been so inspirational to me.
Refile Ledwaba grew up in apartheid South Africa with 6 siblings and a single mother.
I was really privileged to grow up with really powerful women. So all through my childhood, I saw women doctors. My mother was a school principal. So it was something that when I grew up, it was sort of normal for me to see women doing all these exciting things.
Refile Ledwaba will never forget the day, more than a decade ago, when she first flew solo and broke the race and gender barriers in one fell swoop.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Take care.